opinion, these financial statements present fairly the financial condition of the Lakewood School District as of June 30, 2014, and for the year that ended, the 12-month period that ended. Just on the finances, the school district, and I'm going to, let me just check my glasses. But essentially, the total revenues for the school district, and I'm talking only on the general operations now, I'm not talking about any the outside services that are provided or funded from state or federal programs. So just from general sources, the total revenue for the school district was $112 million. And against that, the school district spent $120 million. So for the 12-month period for that fiscal year from July 1st, 13 through June 30th, 2014, the school district actually had an operating loss of $8 million. Now, the school had some monies available to it when it started the fiscal year, so that once we used the monies that we had available to us, we had about $2 million in surplus available to us, so that when the school actually closed its fiscal year for June 30th, 2014, there exists a general fund deficit. There's an accumulated deficit of $6,066,000. So just rounded it out, $6 million deficit. And I just want to stress this, because I know I was here throughout that whole fiscal year, and there was a lot of projections and a lot of estimates, and it's a very complex school system. But I just want to put to rest any discussion of what the numbers were, because essentially these are the audited numbers now. We did go through all the finances, through all the bills, everything that was owed, etc. And the final deficit is $6 million. Part of the corrective act, well, one of the things that the board's going to be asked for this evening is hopefully to take action on a corrective action plan. The corrective action plan would address this deficit issue, and it would also address some of the comments that we have, and I'll just go over that briefly in a few minutes. But with respect to the deficit, we do have other clients who represent other school districts in the state of New Jersey that have made application to the State Department of Ed to finance either all or a portion of that deficit through the state aid loan advance program. There is a statutory program where, at least in my opinion, based as the auditor, this district will qualify under that program. So that is an avenue available to you. Just real briefly, how the program works is the state actually advances a certain amount of money. Let's just go hypothetical, if you do move in that direction, and the state advances the full $6 million deficit, at a minimum, you'd be required to make 1/10 of payment per year. So they really give you 10 years, no interest. So that what they would do is they would just deduct $600,000 from your next 10 years going forward, assuming you made application for the full amount. The second item, and I think everybody is aware of it, but I just we also have a final audit number on this as well, and that's on the Special Revenue Fund. Special Revenue Fund is really your Title I monies, Child Left Behind monies, and it's also your Chapter 192, 193 money, which is your non-public services money. The state representatives from the state have gone throughout many districts in the state of New Jersey, and they've done a very intensified audit of these Title I programs and these non-public programs, but specifically on the Title I, and they disallowed approximately $30 million worth of claimed expenditures on the Title I. And that's what really created the deficit in the Special Revenue Fund. That's really just those disallowed costs. And I just want to make that clear, because it's not like we overspent the allotment, because the district did not overspend the allotment in the Special Revenue Fund. That's strictly a result of that disallowed cost. Again, you have to do a corrective action plan on that $3 million.
Can you just clarify? You're saying $30 million statewide? What is it?
I'm sorry, sir, 3 million is the deficit that we
You
have.
said 30 million.
Oh, thank you for clarifying, it's 3 million, 3,185,000.
3 million.
3 million, I'm sorry,
And that
3
3 million is within the 6 or on top of the 6?
on top of the 6.
So 9 million.
6 million is your general deficit, 3 million is this deficit, this allowed cost of Title I.
I'm assuming they're charging back to the district, is that correct?
Well, what do you call it? You have a couple options on that too, and you need to work this out with the Department of Education, but as a general rule, my experience is they've worked that out over a 5-year period. If you choose not to take the state loan in advance, but I would think one of the options you could do is maybe take the whole 9 million. I mean, but that's certainly for consideration of the district. Or you deal with that 3 million separately.
But my question was, they're still charging back to the district, to local taxpayers.
Well, yeah, it's getting charged back. Yeah, that's correct, sir. No, you're correct, sir.
Peter, would you please explain to the board that those findings were from 11-12, not from 13-14?
That's correct, Mr. Diabola. The state is like 2 years behind on their audit, so that's correct. That's from and that's why I tried to make the point that you didn't overspend the special revenue fund this year. The amount of money we received this year, just to put it in perspective, is 44 million. And that's strictly for this non-public services and via Title I, you received 44 million. They did not audit the 13-14 school year. That is correct, Mr. DeMol. So this goes back 2 years. I think it was the 11-12 year audit. And that's pretty much where they're at right now. So although it's a lot, certainly a lot of money, the $3 million, but the district receives quite a considerable amount in those areas. Are there any questions on the finances? Because if not, I'll move on to some of the compliance issues.
Where has that been funded from? The 6 million that you're short from 11-12 has been paid, the bills have been paid since 11-12.
Okay, that's a really good question. Where's it been financed from? The district, one of the recommendations we had is because there's a very large cash overdraft, which means that checks were written when money really wasn't available to be written.
How'd they clear it? I mean, where was the money coming from?
Yeah, the cash, let me go through that. You had a cash overdraft of 7.7 million. Okay, which when you think about it, because you didn't have the money because you were in the hole, there was $6 million in the hole. Yes, sir.
So then are they short now next year 18? Just double it because we paid up front?
David, can you explain which bank gives overdraft of $7 million? Like how do you take against what you have or minus in your account? Can you explain how it works?
I can explain how I report it and how this works. What essentially happens is the checks are written out for what's owed to vendors. And the checks are written out for what is the liability. So $7 million worth of checks are written.
The bank is not actually giving the money.
No.
The liability, you're saying the liabilities exceed the intake by $7 million.
Correct.
At some point.
That's correct. And that's correct. It's not like the bank account actually had a negative $7 million.
So
Let me make
it's
that
basically
clear.
taking from the future funds.
Correct.
All right.
I'm sorry, Mr. Lurch, I want to clarify one thing. I think there's two shortfalls we're talking about. One is the general fund, 6 million, and then we're talking about another a couple million from Title I money. However,
3 million, right.
3 million. However, these are from two different fiscal years that you're talking about. Isn't it one from 11-12, the other one from 12-13?
And that's absolutely correct, and let me stress that, that's correct. The real operating deficit from 13-14 is 6 million.
Right, so that's not a loan from
No,
something
that's $6 million. What did we spend? We spent $6 million more than what we took in for 13. That's an operating deficit for 13-14. Yeah, the 6 million. The other 3 million is from an audit that was done from 2 years prior. But now they say, okay, you spent the money and you got reimbursed for the money, and now we don't agree that you should have charged the grant for that money. We feel you should have charged the taxpayers. That's essentially what they're saying by doing that.
Right, and the district is not issuing any rubber checks here.
No, no.
I think there's a little misunderstanding here.
Okay. No.
All right,
big misunderstanding, $9 million. To put it in context, let's say take this here, but this, we're going back to 11, 12. We haven't gotten the 13, 14 audited yet, or this just, they're not up to it, but potentially it's not just 9 million, it could be in 13, 14, many, many million more.
Yep, I mean, potentially they could come and do 12, 13, then 13, 14. Yeah.
Is it automatic that they do? They audit every year?
I have not found it to be automatic.
But that would mean to say that if the budget this year was passed, and whoever passed the budget, we should not be a negative this year just based on the regular balancing of budget. If someone created the budget and we, just going back to the budget, but in the 14, 15.
Yeah, under the Constitution of the state of New Jersey, you're required to have a balanced budget. So you're correct, Mr. Rosenblatt. If 14, 15, the year we're operating in right now, if we live within the budget, then we won't be adding to this, to the $6 million deficit. And on the same token, if we're able to save in some areas, I don't know where you're at, because we haven't looked at that yet, that would automatically go to reduce that $6 million deficit.
So assuming at the end of 15, 16, or 14, 15 actually this year, we ran short. That's a problem in we're spending too much and the budget wasn't made up correct?
Well, it's a problem that you spend more than you budget. Because the revenue side, you collected all your money on the revenue side.
I mean, it could be due to the projections not living up to what was expected.
Yeah, just
Yeah,
to refresh
the
my memory,
budget,
the board,
There's a lot of moving numbers in the school district's budgets, which you can't.
just to refresh memory, the board did vote the budget down, and the monitor voted, as you said, the state of New Jersey, the law is that there must be a passed budget. That doesn't mean the board passed the budget. So when something does potentially run short, that could have been a planning up front, not necessarily an overspending.
That's correct, yeah. Let me just, if, through the permission of the chair, there's also, you've also received as part of your package, I hope everybody received, it's a smaller report, and that's called the Accountants Management Report. And if everybody received that, I just want to make a couple comments. I'm not going to read that tonight unless somebody has a specific question regarding it. But part of our responsibilities when this board hires us, we're required to report all administrative issues, the non-compliance issues as they deal with the finances of the district. And we're required to report on whether it's in Title 18A, whether it's a New Jersey Administrative Code, or whether it's, and the state also issues its own audit manual for all us auditors too. The audit manual is probably about 300 pages as well. So whenever we find those issues, we're required to report on those issues, and that's what we did there. And I just synopsize, we have some issues regarding just general bookkeeping, financial reporting issues, none of such a magnitude that they impaired our ability to give a clean opinion on the audit. So I think that's important because whatever adjustments needed to be made were made. So the financial statements do accurately reflect it. Just on the compliance issue, I just want to make a general comment. It's not one for long, but it is a general requirement. This district's a rather large district. And you issue several contracts that exceed $2 million on a regular basis. There was a new law that just came in a few years ago, really, with the when they created that office of the state comptroller. And when they created that office, any contract over $2 million, but below $10 million, you're required to file a copy of that contract with the state controller. So I just do that as a generic thing. And I just want to make this comment now too, and I don't know where you're going to, and I'm only talking from an accounting point of view, you're very well represented by council. If this improvement now, this referendum, if you're going to award a contract that exceeds $10 million, if it exceeds $10 million, you're then required to file that contract with the state controller's office before you actually award that contract. So I just give you basic parameters, because the 2 to 8 million, you're constantly in. I mean, you do have a question. So that's just the filing after the fact. The other one, if it's over 10 million, you have to put that before the fact. And that really concludes my report, unless there's any specific questions.
Through the chair, how do we as a board make sure that we don't go over budget?
Well, we spent a lot of time on the budget last year. My recommendation is, this is a great point in time. You've now finished 6 months of your year. You're halfway into your year. Most of your contractual obligations, you know what they are already. And my recommendation is that you have a projection, prepared for you so that you know where you're at based on what you're spending. Because really all your staff positions are full now. You know all your salaries. You made contracts are given out already. This would be a good time to know where you stand and how you look for the year ended June 30th, 15. And I think that would also be very helpful to the board, for the board members, in your discussions and deliberations for the next year's budget, being the 15-16.
We're doing the thing now. We're
There's
in the process of auditing the current year's budget based on what's been spent so far and doing our own projections.
Oh, great, so then you'll share that with the board.
Sure.
The other thing is, if the board looks at page 3 of the agenda, item C, you'll see that the board is asked every month, based on the certification of the business administrator, to certify that no budgetary line item has account obligations that exceed the amount appropriated for that line. So basically what you're saying is that the budget is not overexpended at that point in time. If you recall back about a year ago, Mr. Dambola started certifying, I think, what was it, September-ish, Mr. Dambola, that he felt that we were going to be in excess of our budgetary appropriations. I think we're up to the end of October as of this agenda tonight, but we're going to certify, obviously, on a monthly basis that at least at this point we don't feel that we're overextended.
So why don't we have it up to last month?
He's with the treasurer right now. He's with the treasurer.
Any more questions?
Yeah, just one comment. When a district grows beyond the cap, beyond the state cap, to raise the budget, okay, there's a state cap in place, 2%, 2.5%. Our expenses, because the growth of our district keeps on growing beyond the 2%, we're automatically going to be over cap year after year. Now what happens is you put it to the voters, right? Is there any?
Well, there is, I'm not going to speak for Mr. Zara, he certainly knows better, but there is provisions in the statute for spending growth increases over and above the 2% for purposes like this.
pension, those are 3 items: pensions, healthcare,
Enrollment.
and enrollment.
Does that represent the majority or only a small portion of our growth? Whatever.
A very small portion.
Very small. So essentially, most of our growth is under the cap, must be kept under the cap.
Yes.
So how does that balance out in a district like Lakewood, where we're well over the cap as far as growth? The percentages of growth is well over the 2% cap. That's something that I argued all last year, and I'm yet to hear an appropriate answer.
Well, you're going to have to scale back to within the cap. And any necessities or priorities you can put out on a separate question to the voters.
So do you project that going forward, this is the way it's going to have to be structured on the corrective action plan?
Well, at this point, we're not even, we're going to start next year. So I wouldn't tell you what to do right now.
But I think the bigger
But I mean,
question,
that's your option at the time.
I think the bigger question is what happens if all the expenses are mandatory? So you could cut off the non-mandatory items, but what happens if having all the mandatory still exceed the 2%? That is the big question, because the district has an obligation in terms of education and other responsibilities that the district cannot just waive, neither does the state or anyone. So I think that's something we're going to have to deal with. Dieter, I have a question for you. Have you done the 12-13 audit on the district? The exit audit, 12-13 school year?
12-13?
Yep.
Yeah, we did that a year ago.
Okay. Are there any items that you're seeing that you were expecting and recommending to be corrected in the 12-13 exit audit that have kind of repeating themselves and you keep on seeing it in the 13 and 14?
The answer is, yes, and we've indicated those with the asterisk.
I'm sorry?
Yes, there are several that were repeated, that's correct, sir.
And those were included in the 12-13 exit report that they should be corrected?
Yes, they are. And they're identified with an asterisk on it so that you'll know that that's a repeat.
All right.
And they are included.
Any more questions?
Yeah, I have one more question. Having been involved with the budget process last year for this 14 and 15, the 14 and 15 year, school year, what is your impression in terms of some of the areas that we grow, but our state aid is kind of frozen flat? Do you think that contributes to the fact that we have a growth, but we don't receive adequate state aid, even at a percentage level, to keep up with the growth?
Yeah, well, I mean, quite honestly, we discussed it at length, and it's one of your largest areas of over expenditure, again, over budget, let me use that word, is tuition outside districts. Your tuition outside districts is growing exponentially. And the state aid is certainly not keeping up with the amount that you're required to spend in that area. So that's the most glaring area.
Is that about $3 million, the state aid?
Well, the amount that was overspent, it would, the state aid, I believe, was around $3 million.
The extraordinary state, yeah. And how long has that kept flat? Has not increased?
Not during my period, I've only, been here for a couple of years. It's not
Right.
during my period.
Now, Mr. Lurch, those recommendations that you mentioned with an asterisk, right? How did that affect our budget and our spending? Is that just, paperwork or?
Yeah, most of the recommendations of the asterisk are simply financial reporting type things that don't really have any impact on the deficit itself.
Right, it was more compliance issues,
Correct.
as opposed to, in hindsight, we could have corrected something that would have saved us money, and we didn't do that. We failed to act on your previous recommendation. Correct?
I don't understand that question.
It's my understanding that with the line items that have asterisks on them, which were your recommendations on the X report of 2012-13,
Correct.
which were then not implemented in 14-15.
That's correct.
Or
13-14.
13-14. So what I'm saying is that those recommendations are mostly compliance issues, not necessarily something that had we taken the recommendation of the audit, it would have helped in our budget issues.
That is absolutely correct.
Okay.
But just to be clear, Dieter, if you could clarify that, those recommendations are not your recommendations in terms of the proper bookkeeping. Those are legal obligations.
Right. They're not recommendations from Lurch, Vinci, and Hayes.
Exactly.
The state says, Dita, you have, the district has to report finances in a certain fashion. How did they comply with that? And I said, well, they did not, this instance, that's
So
a
if I was-
recommendation. It's not a recommendation of Lurch, Vinci, and Hayes. It's a recommendation really to comply
So you point,
with the
so,
state regulations. And we're required to report that to you.
so would a better way to phrase it would be pointing out some of the compliance that needs to be done.
That's correct.
All right. Because recommendation could sound,
Yeah, no, it's-
very large recommendation in terms of making it easier for you to audit or along those lines.
No, that's well stated.
All right.
Any more questions? Thank you, Mr. Lurch.
Thank you very much,
Thank you, Mr.
everyone.
Lurch.
Have a nice evening. Thank you.
Next, we're going to,
No, minutes. Minutes from last meeting. Tom, can we go through the minutes from last time?
On the agenda, I'm sorry. The minutes for October 10th,
On the December.
I have Mr. Friedman, Mr. Rosenblatt, Mr. Schwartz have to abstain.
December.
I have minutes on 10/10 here. It's December what?
December 10th. December 10th, correct.
The same that people have to abstain?
Yeah, Mrs. Gonzalez was here, Mr. Jankowitz, and Mr. Zlotko were here.
Okay,
those that are present right now.
motion to accept the minutes?
I'll make a motion.
I make a motion. Second.
Who made the motion? Mrs. Lockton, thank you. Okay, Mrs. Lockton,
Yes.
Ms. Gonzalez,
Yes.
Mr. Zankovich.
Yes.
There's the only three that can go through it, so it's been passed. We have some additions to the agenda, there's changes. You should have them on your desk. We have some corrections, there are three. On the agenda, page 9. This is the addition, page 9. This is the addition. The public has this. Please add Vera Cunha on item number 10, on page 9. And on page 19, item number 2, change the last name from Ladson to Lasdun.
Skip page 11.
That was page 19. Then page 11, I have item number 22. Change the amount not to exceed $3,700 to $4,820. Also on item number 22, add Shay O'Neill and Doreen Steinmetz. Have a motion to accept the corrections?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
While we're addressing corrections to the agenda, there's one other thing I wanted to point out. Item number 6 is entitled Recognition of the Public. Per our policy, we have 2 public participation sessions. So the recognition of the public under item number 6 will be a recognition of the public on agenda items only. And then we will have a second public session at the end of our meeting per our policy, which will be on any other topic of interest to the community. And that will occur right after new business or good and welfare was inadvertently left off the agenda.
Agenda items only are now open to the public.
And there's 2 sign-in sheets, one that indicates agenda items only and one that indicates any other topic.
So I just want to mention, I do have 2 sign-in sheets. It's possible that some members of the public were not familiar with the process. So I'm just going to go through the names and just let me know if you want to speak on agenda items only, which will take place right now. If you decide that you want to hold it for later, I know, Mr. Hobby, you have to deal with both. I have that. If anybody else wants to speak on the agenda items other than Mr. Hobby that had signed on the other sign-in sheet, I'm sorry, it's the opposite way around. We have agenda items with 5 people signed in. They may have inadvertently signed in on the agenda items only. However, I'm going to read through the names. Mr. Hoffman, you indicated that you want to participate on the agenda items. Pastor Glenn, agenda items. Ms. Annette Kearney, agenda. Fred Rush, agenda, and Dr. Rush, agenda. Okay, so let's start with the first member, Mr. Bill Hoffman.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Bill Hoffman, Third Schoolhouse. I'm going to assume that the audit report is part of the agenda.
Yes.
I found it to be devastating. I found very good questions from the board. As far as I knew and understood, that school districts were not allowed to get into deficit spending. We seem to do it continuously. Yet I hear an audit that says, you're okay. You're not okay. You're into deficit spending where any other business would have been looking for different jobs or some kind of a bailout, or folding that business. So you have you have several revenue streams, including the federal government, the state government, your municipal taxpayers. And you have the budget, which is divided into mandatory. You have to pay the utility bills. You have to do the things that are mandated by the state. It is your obligation to provide a thorough and efficient education. But then you have discretionary items. And when push comes to shove in any business, you start looking at the discretionary budget. I was in business for 35 years. We looked at a budget to actual. Where am I in this year? And what am I spending, overspending, and underspending? And how can I configure this or find a new revenue source? You folks are out of other revenue sources, unless you can convince the federal government to do as they do and print your own money. The absence of that says you shouldn't be overspending. Now, there has to be some semblance of order, that you know what you can afford to do and what you can't afford to do, and the downside of overspending. And apparently, what I see year after year after year, there is no downside. You're not being held responsible for anything. The $6 million, okay, they'll take $600,000 a year for the next 10 years. I don't get the feeling that you're worried about that. You better be worried about that.
Sorry, Mr. Howley, 3 minutes are up. I'm going to give you a little bit more time because I didn't make that announcement prior to the meeting. But with the new policy, we do have a 3-minute limit.
Okay, if I say that, I just want to get one more.
Sure, no problem, thank you.
Item number N on your additions to the body of the agenda. Lakewood Board of Education hereby directs the administration to advertise an RFP for special legal counsel to the Board of Education for special litigation matters. Comments? You have a board attorney. This is one of those things that is discretionary in nature, and here we go again. This is revisiting the past. I would strongly advise this is not the direction to go with. And thank you very much. Thank you, Madam President. And thank you, professionals.
Thank you. Next up, Pastor Ramos.
Good evening to all of you.
Good evening.
Most of you I haven't seen since last year, so I want to wish you all a happy new year.
Thank you. Happy New Year.
Prosperous new year. Just following up on what Mr. Hopley was speaking, so I'm going to be short because he pretty much covered a lot of what I wanted to say. And I will speak on the next section about the CUSAC report that just came out. And given the fact that our school system is in such a dire need for help, how is it that we are able to go out and spend money? We are in deficit in trying to hire another attorney. Now, I'm going to limit myself to say this because you will answer the question, right? I mean, what Mr. Holiday addressed. I don't know if there's an answer for it, but what I want to say is that every time we see, or every time we come to this time of the year, where we are trying to hire an attorney, it always sends shockwave through our community, because there's always the idea that we may consider rehiring a past attorney. And what I want to say to you, that any consideration to rehire a past attorney will be considered as a violation of civil rights to our children. Because we all know the damage that that individual did to our district, single-handedly destroyed our district. So any consideration to even consider him as a candidate for this position will be taken very seriously in our community. It will be a civil right violation to us. So I hope and pray that we can work together as a as a team, as we have been working as a team, to better the educational system of all our children. But we cannot continue to work in deficit. So what is it that we can do and the gentleman, I mean, I'm sorry, he left. For him to stand here and say it's okay, and we got $6 million in deficit, that's okay. If I ran my house, if I had $6 million, I wouldn't be here tonight. But if I ran my house, $1,000 in deficit, I would be responsible. So how then can we better the course of our children if we don't have the money to do so?
Pastor Wilson, we normally don't have conversations back and forth.
I
We don't want to start that. We don't want to start that. But I have to say, I mean, there's a lot of legal overflow issues that we need. This attorney that we want to hire, we haven't picked one yet.
Right.
And also, it's too much for our attorney. He's overwhelmed. We have so many legal issues to address. And I'll let him speak on that himself.
My understanding that item N is simply to help my firm with some of the overflow. We have a big firm, but only about 9 attorneys devoted exclusively to school law. I don't think there's any case, at least not that I'm aware, the board has in mind right now for this particular assignment. I think it's just, again, to handle some overflow issues. As I understand it, the intent, I could be wrong, of course, but my understanding is the intent is not to bring back former attorneys. I guess the board can certainly speak that issue better than I could.
And I understand, given the number of special cases that we have in our district, my intent is never to restrict the services that those children deserve, so well deserved. I am blessed that I don't have a child of my own that needs those services. So it is never our intent to limit. So if the spirit behind this is to provide better services to those children, we have no issues with that.
Pastor Wilson, we do have already a special counsel, Mr. Harrison, who deals the overflow from the special ed cases. So he's not going to be the first special addition to the attorneys.
Mr. Attorney?
Can you just clarify what you just said?
We have a special counsel, Mr. Harrison. We have a lot of special ed cases, and Mark's firm was not able to handle all of them, so we have somebody who's already maybe a year working for us.
He handles some select cases. There were some cases that I had a conflict of interest on. Without getting into specifics of why there was a conflict, the board did hire Mr. Harrison to help out with some of those special education matters.
Okay, so on that note, so what we're saying is that in addition to Mr. Mark's firm, in addition to the gentleman or the firm that you brought on to help Mr. Mark's firm, he now needs another attorney to help with the amount of cases? Is that?
We're not talking about specific cases. We're talking about overall board's work.
Okay. I'm asking because you were the president back then when the discussion was about fees and the last former firm, that the fees racked up in the district and we were trying to save money.
$1.2 million.
Okay, so So all these attorneys are not going to.
No, this is a work that has to be done by our attorney. It would have been done by Mark regardless,
At the same cost.
at the same cost. This is no additional cost to the district, absolutely not. This work has to be done, it will be done by Mark. Mark management has to start very late, and he wants to give some of the work to another attorney.
Okay. My question
But it's
is,
not limited to special ed or anything, it's just
Mr. Locke,
whatever.
I just wanted to be fair to the speaker here that we're.
I was asking a question here. Is that correct? Was I asking a question? I was asking a question. Mr. Schwartz?
I don't want to take away from her time that she has, because she only has 1 minute left right now. So let's not go back and forth.
the auditor, I believe he left, but he made a statement that the biggest expense was sending out to other districts. I just wanted clarification, what does that mean? Like we're sending to Brick and we're paying them? How, like what does that mean?
We will answer that before this meeting is adjourned, we'll get an answer. Okay, so we can just keep moving along, but you will get an answer before this meeting is over.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Fred Rush?
Good evening, Fred Rush. I listened to that auditor, and obviously you guys have been in meetings with them to determine how things go. But when you talk to the public, maybe I should pay more attention in school to math and all that. But like Pastor Man said, if I'm trying to manage my money and we are overspending all the time, there's no way we won't have a deficit. The biggest problem that we have in terms of deficit every year, that you touched on, is the influx of new students. And the obligation that this board has to make sure that they're transported, make sure that they get special services. So we're going to continue to have that. So, we can probably find the youngest person in here and say that those things where we have to pay the special money, you talk about 10 years, let's go maybe 40 or 50 years, because it's going to be a long time. So I would hope that in the future, when you talk about some of these things, Madam President, when you talk about some of these things in how do I say it? Layman's terms, so that some of the public can understand it. Now, I know that Dr. Rush, he understands it because he was on the Board of Education. And he was principal superintendent like this Winters. But he understands those things. We all know. I'm still puzzled. And before I come to speak, I always ask my brother so that the advice or the question that I need answered is an appropriate question. And I understand that we have obligations for all of our children. But I look at some of these special ed, and I know they come under Title I, but there's some stuff that I've never heard of. Every time I come here, if I look at one of these, there's something, a new program. Who dreams of these things, What's going on? And I do understand that there's special needs, and we have kids with special needs, whether they be physical or mental. But it shouldn't be that every time, new programs, all the time. And that's what we're faced with.
Is there anything specific on the agenda that you're referring to?
Well, on page 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, I won't point out just one because one is equally important from one person to the other. But I just want to make sure that we keep those things in mind, because when we come here with the same concerns about our children as any other school. And I know that you guys have a big obligation.
Mr. Rush, I'm going to have Ms. Winters address your question about the pages that you pointed out.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
What you're seeing on those pages are actually Title I professional development for non-public schools for Title I. So there's a lot of non-public schools, over 100 non-public schools, the way you're seeing it looks like a lot, and in reality it's really not that much.
But are there new ones every year? You know,
No, each non-public school is allocated a certain amount of professional development.
and Dr. Rush did tell me that.
So they can use the money how they so choose, as long as it goes to the
We have
guidelines.
any of those things in our public schools.
Of course, we have a lot of professional development.
So we both have
Yes.
similar things.
Yes, we do.
There are separate funds. There are funds for the public schools that own them.
Oh, that I understand.
And then for non-public, and we, in our classrooms, we have a lot of the Title I funds, like the rec funds where we have the smart boards and the smart tables and so forth. So I think we utilize the funds to the maximum.
Madam President, I just want to mention one quick thing. I just want to make sure that it doesn't seem like we're jumping on one set of youngsters versus another set of youngsters. Because, the way we see it, people have concern for theirs, and we have concern for ours.
No, we understand. We appreciate
Thank you,
it.
Nick.
Thank you.
Next up, Dr. Rush.
My brother did ask those questions, but I didn't have time to try to answer them all. Mike Rush, 1502 Mountain Drive. Let me just say that I guess I'm going to talk about what everybody else talked about, the other speakers before me. But I'm going to add a little something to this. I don't believe what you're telling us. I really don't believe what you're telling us regarding the special counsel. I do believe that you have a lot of cases. That's always the case in Lakewood. That's understandable. But the way you're going about handling it, I don't believe you. One of the reasons I'm concerned is that you have on the agenda the QSAC report. Your QSAC said that you failed 2 out of the 5 areas. And if you fail 2 out of 5 areas, and you're dealing with, and you want to hire somebody to deal with special counsel, whether it's somebody to help Mark or somebody else to help Harrison, you don't have the money to do that. And it's almost like you're barking up the wrong tree. Our kids are hurting. You saw Marlon Young, an age student who's been in Omega for a while, and you saw another young lady, Boyer. These kids get what they need because these kids are in AP classes. AP classes, so by the state laws and new regulations, they're going to get it. But I'm concerned about the kids who are not there yet. The kids who are C average kids, CB average or below, and our special needs kids. We talk about spending, but you're spending foolishly. Money's going where it should not go. Now, no disrespect to Mark or your attorney, but if you have cases you need to do, you need to figure out how you can do them in the time allotted. Rather than going out spending money that we don't have to bring in additional counsel. It doesn't make sense. If we continue to spend like we're spending in the next 5 years, it's because of the growth. And the growth doesn't bother me. People can live where they want, come where they want. That's okay. But we can't continue to spend based on what we don't have. Just like everybody talked about budgets. If I got too much month at the end of my money, I'm doing something wrong. And budgets you can't run in deficits. So you have to go back to the drawing board, get your BA, your superintendent, your board committees, and say, what do we need to do to make this better? Because it's coming up spending money, asking the board, asking the attorney, the BA to get this, to get that, and not knowing or understanding budgets, it's going to put us further in the hole. So I am suggesting to you, as Pastor Graham did, and I did the last time we spoke, we are community people. We live here. When you say put it on the taxpayers, you're putting it on us. Let us help you. Let us help you figure out how to deal with special education. My background is special education.
Dr. Rush, your time's up. Thank
Can I get another minute? You gave Mr. Holiday one.
That's up to the board president.
Yes, yes.
Well, I'm just saying, we're here to help. I don't mean that figuratively. We are here to help you, okay? My background is special education. I know some of the cases you have because some parents have called me. There's no reason for us to have that many cases on backlog. So there are ways we can do this if you guys allow us to help. Okay? Thank you. Now, I'd like for Ms. Alejandro. This lady was working, and she got here too late. I'm asking you to allow her to speak a few minutes.
Is she on the agenda items only section of the agenda or on anything non-related to the agenda?
Okay, let us speak.
Is it for agenda items now?
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Alejandro?
Hi, how are you? Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Alejandra Morales. I'm living in Lakewood. My opinion is the same to the rest of the people here. Just I want to let you know, please touch your car before take decision. I brought my car when I go to the public transit school and I see the kids. Couple weeks ago, I go to...
Ms. Morales, I'm sorry if I didn't clarify. This portion of the public meeting is about agenda items only. You could possibly have another chance to speak later if you wish.
I understand, but this point comes from the talk about to the money. Because say money, money, and money. Where I go to the money? Where go the money? You understand? Because you're talking about no money for the public school. All the time say it's a deficit. It's a deficit. So where I go to the money? Because I want to ask it to you. One day you go to see to the buildings. One day you go to see to the lunch. Who paid the lunch?
Go on. You're running the clock.
No, don't tell me because I answer the questions because that I answer.
I'm sorry, it's not back and forth, okay? We're allowing you 3 minutes.
Okay, so please, Dr. Roach say, let him know he come to help all everybody here. Because where are the rest of the people here for the border? It's not here. Why? Because the kids is now in the public